there. Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would have not died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, she was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. So the Jews said, See how he loved him. But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also have kept this man from dying?
Thank you very much for the reading. So, what statement occurs twice in this passage? What statement? I'm not hearing from my closest neighbors here. If you shout it, I will hear, sir. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And this occurs in which verses? Verse 21 by Martha, and then verse 32 by Mary. Let's see how Jesus responded to them equally here. I mean, both of them said the same thing at different times, but Jesus responded differently to each of them. To Martha, Jesus engages in a theological discussion with her. I think this is where we have one of the most profound statements of Jesus, and indeed one of the bases of Christian doctrine, the resurrection. And Jesus says, I am the resurrection. This is really profound. But to Mary, Jesus engages her on a personal and an emotional level, and he weeps with her. And I've heard people think that Martha is not a serious person, but that Mary is more serious than Martha. You know, this is how we classify people. We think the other one is not so much like this. We prefer the one that is more gentle, more quiet, and we think that the one whom is more active and more outgoing is not really, you know, that kind of good person. But God has made us uniquely, differently in his image, and he has blessed us with so many gifts, with so many talents. So we see Jesus here engaging in that theological discussion. Look at what Martha said. If Martha did not know much, would she even say, I know you will rise again in the resurrection at the last day? It's Martha who even brought up the issue of the resurrection. And then Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. And the one who believes in me will live even though they die. And he even asked her, do you believe this? And Martha said, yes, to affirm her faith in the Lord. And so Jesus responded to Martha. And this is what Martha needed for her own comfort because of her brother's death. As she was grieving, she wanted to be assured that, yes, one day I will see my brother. And that Jesus gave it to her. Mary, on the other hand, Mary was just weeping. She was the more emotional type, the more perhaps on the reserved type. And all she did was to weep. And then Jesus also wept with her. Here we have also the shortest verse in the Bible, in the whole Bible. Jesus wept because Mary was weeping. So let's see how Jesus did with these two sisters. He responded to them differently. And each of them needed that at that point in time. And Jesus recognized the two sisters were very different. How do we look at people? Do we see people the same way? I know that I remember even in our country sometimes, or even let me come down to the level of the church. Sometimes when a pastor is transferred and another one comes, we say, oh, he's not like the other one. I've heard that. In my church, somebody said, this pastor he doesn't do like the other pastor. The other one takes decisions on his own. He consults with people. He should be able to, So we complain. We forget that people are different. People are different, and they are made in God's image, and God has uniquely blessed everyone. Jesus was sensitive. How sensitive are we to the way God has made us as individuals? Jesus was sensitive to these two sisters, and he was able to do this because he perceived and knew that they needed something different. He cared for them, he was compassionate to them, and he was able to respond to this. Now, I want to ask you a question. What lessons can we learn from this? What lessons? And I want you to just turn to your neighbor, talk to your neighbor in a minute or two, or less than a minute or two. What lessons can you learn from this, please? Let me give that minute or two discussion. And I want to hear you talking to your neighbor, please. Talk to your neighbor. What lessons can you learn from this? Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Okay. I know somebody has mentioned a lesson that they have learned, okay? And the second question is this: how will you apply this lesson? How will you apply it to your life? Maybe to your home. Maybe even to the congregation you are serving. How will you apply this lesson? Okay. So I would like one person, please, a volunteer to come and share with us what lesson they have learned and how they want to put it into practice. Come, sir. Come.
Praise the Lord. The lesson I learned from this, I brought my elders before me, and I discovered that all my elders, they are different people. Then there are those that are emotional. There are those that are not emotional. And there are quiet type. And there are those that are active. Then I need to handle them based on the way I understand them. And to bring it to myself, as the pastor of that church, then I need to accept them and work with them based on the way we met each other till the very time we part.
Thank you very much, sir. Let's clap for him. Thank you. If I were in my usual workshop, I would say you should give him a big power clap. Or do you want to do power? Let's rub our hands. Rub, power. Clap. When I say power, you clap and you send it to this side. This is where he is. Okay, rub, power. Let's give it to him. Thank you. Okay. I know you have very many lessons. He has shared with us about his elders. And I know that in some churches, truth is that there's always that tension between the elders and the pastor. And sometimes that, in some churches, is so explosive and it's bad not to know. But the truth is that we fail to see that God has made us differently. And he has endowed in us strengths and weaknesses, okay? And we will be looking at this soon too. Thank you for sharing, sir. Now, some of the lessons: different individuals have different needs. And it's helpful to respond to different people so that their needs are met, okay? And in the same way, Jesus responded differently to different people. We too need to respond differently to different people. God has created each one of us differently. And there is no one single characteristics, a list that makes up a leader, or let me say a pastor. There's no one single characteristic. There's, a chain of them from 1 to 10 or to 20 that will make up This is who a best pastor should be. All right? From God's perspectives, we are pastors, we are leaders from who God has made us to be. First. And then, of course, he has given us the roles. And I know, and I'm not saying that there are no characteristics for the role. There are. But first and foremost, this is who we are. And I don't think God wants to force us into a mold. I don't think God wants to do that. God wants us to lead from where we are, from who we are. And if we're able to lead from that perspective, then we need to understand ourselves better. As we understand ourselves, we also want to understand other leaders. Okay, he has talked about his elders. He says some of them are emotional, so he would like to understand more about these elders, who they are. In the same way, understanding ourselves first helps us. And this is where we fail. Many times we don't understand who we are. All right? And this is where we get to the leadership style inventory, which is on page 39. So turn to page 39. We're going to do this leadership style inventory together. It will only show your preferred style. I want you to pick it up and pick your pencil or your pen. Your pencil or pen. I will read out the statements. There are 4 groups here. There's group 1 statements, group 2 statements, group 3 statements, if you turn to page 40, and group 4 statements. Now, I will start from group 1. If I read the statement, I grasp the big picture more quickly than others around me. If this one sounds like you, if it describes you most of the time, just tick that column. Can you see those 3 columns to the right of page 39? Are you with me there? If you're with me, let me see you raising this thing up from my, yes. All right, thank you. Good. So let's walk together like that. You don't spend too much time on this. There's no right or wrong answer here. And there's none that is better than the other. It's just a preferred style. Some of you at the end will see that you have the same style, maybe the same marks on all. It doesn't matter. Okay, so are you ready to start? Okay, so let's go. I grasp the big picture more quickly than others. Is it most of the time, some of the time, or none of the time? Just tick the column. Tick it. Just put a tick. Can I go to number 2? I like to make things happen quickly. Just tick the column that best describes you. Most of the time, some of the time, none of the time. Let me go to the 3rd one. I am not very good at details. Tick the column that best describes you. I go to the next one. I tend to challenge the status quo or the way things always have been. Tick the column that best describes you. When necessary, I will take control to make things happen. I go to the next one. I find it hard to be a good team player. Next, some people say that I am not a very good listener. Next, I often get bored when my ministry becomes routine. I get frustrated when other people resist my ideas. I welcome challenge and change. The more, the better. Are we done? If you're done, let me see your hand. Wave this. Okay. Thank you for walking fast with me. Please, I forgot to mention that we should be very honest about this. If you do an honest assessment, it will show you truly who you are. So let's go to group 2 statements. I'll read them, giving just a few seconds in between. I am a person who generates enthusiasm in people around me. I work best when I am free from the control of others. I often put people ahead of the task. Managing time is difficult for me. People like to be around me. I tend to take it personally when people disagree with me. I don't do very well with facts and detail work. I find it easy to express my thoughts and feelings. I do best when I sense that others really like me. I'm effective in motivating others to work together. Okay, so let's turn the page over. Are we done? Are we done? Right in front of me here, in the tent in front of me. Are you done? Let me see you waving it if you're done, please. Okay, turn over the page to page 40. Group 3 statements. People say I demonstrate patience and understanding. Is it most of the time, some of the time, none of the time? Just tick appropriately. People say that I am easy to get along with. I am a good listener. People are just as important to me as the ministry program. I do best in situations where people work together in harmony or happily. I am most effective when my work situation is stable and secure. I do best when people let me know that I am appreciated. Too much change threatens me. My superiors can rely on my loyalty. I do everything I can to meet the needs of those who are close to me. Let's move to group 4 statements. I can be counted on to carry out a task I am given. One of my best strengths is paying attention to detail. If a job is worth doing, I'll give it my best. I need to know exactly what is expected of me. I don't want to make decisions without having all the facts. I have difficulty in expressing my feelings. I am a cautious person who hesitates to take risks. I function well within known guidelines and policies. I am critical when my performance falls short of standards. People often wonder just what I am thinking. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. So we are done with that, okay? Now to score it, let's go to page 39. All right? In the first group, group 1, just look at the ones that you scored most of the time. All right? And put your total there where it says number of statements you ticked in column 1, all right? Where you ticked most of the time, just add the totals. Only the most of the times for each of the groups. So let's start with group 1. Go back to group 1. Check the first column, most of the time. How many times did you score most of the time in group 1, in the group 1 statements? Put the total, the number of times there. So if you ticked all most of the time, it means you will have 1, 2, 3, 10, okay? If you ticked most of the times, if you ticked all of that column, at the first, most of the time, it will be 10. But if some of the statements you ticked some of the time, others you ticked none of the time, it should give you a score out of 10. Is it understood? Is it understood? Okay. All right, so you do the same with group 2. Group 2 statements. Check the number of times you ticked most of the time and put the total. Are we done with group 2? Okay, turn to group 3 statements. Are we turning to group 3? Check the number of times you ticked most of the time and put the total. We didn't give a space there for the total, but you can put it just in the little row that is there above group 4 statement. And then do the same for group 4 statements. Are you with me so far? So we are done with the scoring procedure, but there's a final one here on page 41. Now you've been told how to score it. So group 1, where it says group 1, your score, total times you ticked column 1. What is the total? Put your total there. Put your total in the little box there. And then the total time, which means you're transferring your total scores from each of those group statements to the summary we have there. So group 1, put your total score in the box. Group 2, put your total score. Group 3, put your total score. Group 4, put your total score of most of the time. Now, look at all of this, group 1 to 4 in the summary. The group with your highest score, it's your dominant tendency. Are you with me? Hello? Are you with me? The tent in front of me, are you with me? Okay. So let's interpret the scores now. Let's interpret the scores. Different people, your leadership style, interpreting your results. I'm reading there. Different people tend to behave in different ways when they are given leadership responsibility. But it seems that there are 4 different patterns to our behavior. And we call these behavioral styles. What we've just done is to walk through a questionnaire which will help you to identify which is your preferred style when you are leading others. Each of these behavioral styles have positive characteristics or attributes, but there are also negative ones with each of the styles too. And it's also important to understand that having each of these behavioral styles are absolutely necessary in a leadership team. It's not that one is better than the other. All the behavioral styles are important. So you definitely fall into one of these. Okay? The first is called designer developers. Can we say that together? Designer developer. Okay, so how many of you scored highest as a designer developer? Let me see your hand up, please. Your highest score was in designer developing. Please, I can't see those hands. Maybe raise your program. If you raise it, I will see better. Okay, designer developers, designer developers. Okay, get ready. I will ask somebody to come and tell us what a designer developer is. And you will tell us whether it describes you or not. Okay? I will read the style, the characteristics. Let's turn to page 42. The second of these styles is called motivator influencer. Motivator influencer. How many of you scored highest there? Let's see your hands, your program up. Okay? And then the third one is a team builder. Team builder. How many of you scored highest there? All right? I can see. And then the last one is implementer. Implementer. Let's see how many of you scored highest there. Okay. All right. Perhaps some people may still be having some problems with this, but I think eventually you will get it done with. So, let's go back to designer developer. Who is a designer developer? Let's have one person who is a designer developer, one who is a motivator influencer, and a team builder, and an implementer. Volunteers from each of these to come and read, especially if you have read it, please. Hello? Hello? Volunteer, designer, developer. Nobody wants to volunteer? How many of you are designer developers here? Please, let's see your hand up again. Come forward, sir, to come and read. And let's have a motivator influencer to get ready, and a team builder as well.
In page 41, the first of these styles is called a designer developer. And if you scored first in the group 1, this is your primary style. Basically, designer or developers are people who, 1, like to take charge. 2, they are the kind of persons that like to get things started. They can also be very dominant, directive, and very highly motivated, and they like to motivate others too. They are strongly focused on the vision and goals. But because this is such a high priority of them, people often get forgotten about or even trampled on.
Ask you, sir, does this describe you to a certain extent?
Very well. Very well.
How many designer developers agree that this describes them? How many? Okay, good. I wish we had time. We would have done it in groups. Let's have the second one. Okay, let's do the team.
This is for team builder. 1, they They are very people-oriented, who notice the needs that other people have and want to meet those needs. They tend to be very friendly and open people. They are loyal to the group. They are highly motivated to help a group work together effectively.
Does it describe you? Both of them agree that it describes them very well. Okay, thank you. So let's have implementer. We are still waiting for a motivator influencer.
Yeah, as implementers, one, we are strongly focused on the task that is to be done. We want the task to be done with excellence. We are great at planning and implementing those plans. We are usually quite analytical and also quite cautious. And we want to make sure everything is done well and that everything has to be into account. And that's who we are.
So it describes you very well. Okay, we finally have a motivator influencer. Oh, good.
The second of this style is called a motivator or influencer. They like to have people around them, tend to be expressive, show their emotions, are inspiring people to be around, are often very good salespeople because people like them and respond to them very positively. Very well. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And I know if you know these people who came out and I asked you, does it describe them? You're likely to say yes. Am I right? Okay, so this to a large extent is your preferred style. It doesn't mean that you don't have other characteristics on the other styles, but that you have a most preferred one, which you have done. Let's appreciate these people by giving them a power clap. Rob, power! Just spread it to where they are. Thank you. All right. Now, I wish, can you turn to your neighbor and discuss what could be the strength of your own preferred style? Just say, what is the strength? I discuss one strength and one weakness, perhaps. Just turn to your neighbor, discuss the strengths and the weaknesses, but just look at just one or two. What is the strength of my own preferred style? What could be the weakness of my preferred style? Okay, can we have just 4 more people to just come and share one strength, one weakness, one of each of the styles? So let's have people from the different styles. Anyone would like to volunteer? Anywhere you are, if you want to volunteer, please come. Just move forward. Designer, developer, one strength, one weakness. Motivator, influencer, one strength, one weakness. Don't worry, all the styles have strengths and all the styles have weaknesses. So I wish I could ask which is the best. And there's no best, okay? They are all styles. God has endowed us with all of this, and we all have strengths and weaknesses. No volunteer? Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. From the other tent, can we have a volunteer? Sir, are you designer, developer? Which one? Implementer. Okay. So let's have volunteers, please. We have one implementer coming.
Praise the Lord. I discovered that in the implementer, they love to do their job perfectly. And when there is no opportunity to do that job perfectly, to taste, they may get frustrated and want to give up. No, there is no weakness there, but yes. And yes, because they have that zeal, that desire to do their work perfectly, whenever there is no avenue to do that work perfectly to their taste, it makes them get discouraged. It makes them get weakened.
To add to what my colleague has said,
The weakness.
yes, we're in this very group, we're all
Implementer.
about excellency. And, you know, we're living in the world that is very difficult to meet up with that demand to be perfect and to be excellent. So when you fail to have it, there at the end, you'll be disappointed because your demand is not being met up of being excellent the way you want it to be perfect.
All right. And
Yes,
you
sir.
may get on toes, eh?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, motivator, influencer. Designer, developer, okay.
Designer, developers, they are the people that want to take charge. And with this, the spirit of I is always found in them.
All right. Thank you.
I in everything.
All right.
If immediately you don't attach to them, they get annoyed.
Okay, and that can be a weakness too,
That's a
right?
weakness.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, as part of the designer developer, they are highly or always want to impress people because they tend to control in a way, and their weakness is the fact that they want to dictate.
Okay.
And whatever they said, it must stand.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Motivator, influencer.
Motivator, influencer. This is a man of the people. He moves the people to do something. And as they achieve, they are happy. But their goal is also achieved. And everybody is happy because they have achieved something as a team. But the person, sometimes, by way of weakness, his heart is out there for the people, and sometimes he forgets about himself. And also, sometimes with that, the goal of the organization sometimes is impaired.
Yes, I want to add, apart from being a implementer, I also have more traits of a team builder. And then the weakness of that is being people-oriented. We want to make great sacrifices for the team to be kept together. And then when we meet with people who are not of our own nature, who are selfish, we can get frustrated, we can get discouraged.
All right, so thank you. Let's give them power. Rob, power. Okay, Ngode. I'm also a team builder, and I think one of the weaknesses is we don't take decisions on time. We don't take decisions on time at all, except on emergencies, okay? But if it is something, many times I will say, okay, just give me time, I will think about it. That's what I do. And the next time you could say, I will say, I'm still thinking, but I will come back after some days. So that is the weakness of a team builder. Okay, so now that we've seen what these styles are, so how do you build a team? How can you build a team with all of this, knowing this? What do you do to build a team? The first thing you should do when you're building a team is to understand these individual differences, which we have done right now. And I see many of you already, you will take this home and perhaps even do it with your elders and perhaps even your families. Some of you will use it at home to see how God has placed your family in this regard. So it's good that we all understand that we have strengths and we have weaknesses, and that all of these are important as we build a team. All right? And so understanding and knowing your strengths and weaknesses together with that of your team members will be very, very helpful as you try to work with each other in a team situation. We said before that the designer developer, there are people who are decisive, independent, efficient, practical people, and very determined. But when these are carried to the extreme, they can become weaknesses. So it's good to note that also. If a designer developer is very, very decisive and carries it to the extremes, it becomes dominating. So you may see the person being very dominating. And when efficiency is carried to an extreme, some people become disinterested in what is happening. So designer developers should note that. And when being determined turns into a weakness, when the person insists on doing something no matter what, even if they have to run over other people to get the task done, then it no longer becomes a good idea. All right, so designer developers should think of that and note that. Now for motivator influencers, they are stimulating people, they are enthusiastic, they are dramatic people and very outgoing people. They keep relationships with people very well. And they use their enthusiasm to motivate people. They can motivate people very well. But when they carry it to extremes, this also can become weaknesses. And they can get overexcited. And when they do that, it's not so good. All right? And then for the team builder, because you're highly relational, supportive of others, willing and dependable, in the end, if you carry all of this to extremes, it can become a weakness. And the high value that you place on relationship ends up that you cannot take a decision because you don't want to alienate people. So this also becomes a weakness. And then for the implementer, they are very thorough, very persistent, orderly, serious, and industrious. And their strengths become weaknesses, and their thoroughness can end up with them being very critical. So if people are not doing this, they can be very critical. And because they focus on details, it can be a problem. I'm sure you are already thinking of, not just individuals, but people perhaps you've worked with. Somebody will tell you, what are the details about this issue? Give me the details. Somebody will tell you, I don't want the details, just give me what I want to know. So we are all different. Now, if we are thinking of building the team, first is to know and recognize the fact that we are all different and that we have these weaknesses and strengths. So let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Can we go to 1 Corinthians chapter 12? We have a similar thing here. 1 Corinthians chapter 12. I wish somebody. From verse 14. I wish we had somebody to read for us. But because of time, let me just read 1 Corinthians 12:13. Is it 1st or 2nd Corinthians, where the foot is saying to the ear that, okay, it's 12, yeah, okay. Yes. All right, so 14, it says, even so the body is not made up of one part, but of many. Now, if the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed the parts of the body, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And the parts that we think are less honorable, we treat with special honor. And the parts that are unpresentable are treated with special modesty, while our presentable parts need no special treatment. But God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the parts that lack it, so that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. And if one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. Now, why do you think the eye might say to the hand, I don't need you? It's because the hand is not an eye. All right? Look at your eye, look at your hand. The hand is not the eye. So the hand might think, okay, because I'm not an eye, I don't need the eye. The eye understands its function, but it doesn't understand the function of the hand, nor fully appreciate the role of the hand in the function of the body. Similarly, the team builder might not fully appreciate the role of the designer developer. And the designer developer might not fully appreciate the role of the motivator influencer. You know, we tend to view others from the perspective of our own strengths. And if someone doesn't have the strengths that we have and which we value, then we have that tendency to think that we don't need them. But that is not so. We tend to view others in terms of their weaknesses, not in terms of their strengths. That's what we often do. Now, let me just ask you a question. Think of someone you know who is not your own style, okay? If you're a designer developer, think of somebody you know who is not your own style. How do you view them? How do you view and think of them? This is just for you to reflect on, okay? All right, so let me move on and see how we can achieve this best. So we've looked at if you turn to the page 34, let's quickly look at page 34. Look at page 34. You will see all the strengths there and all the weaknesses. So there's nobody that will say, I'm out of it. My own style has no weaknesses. No. We all have the weaknesses and the strengths there. Okay, I'm looking at how we can do this even better. So can you discuss with your neighbor again, out of those weaknesses or strengths? Out of those weaknesses, just look at them quickly. Discuss with your neighbor which one you think you may be having. Which of these weaknesses of your strengths and of your style may be quite perhaps dominant in you. Just look at it, please. Okay. Have you discussed? All right. So look at the weaknesses of a developer, designer developer. They are dominating, they are pushy, overbearing, obstinate, bored by detail and routine. A motivator, influencer, look at your own weaknesses. You can be excitable, you speak first, then you think, you're talkative, you're manipulative. For a team builder, you're conforming, indecisive, unimaginative, passive, unassertive. An implementer, you're critical, you can be stuffy, inflexible, moralistic, and picky. Okay? This may be true or not true of you, but remember, we're just dealing with a preferred style. Now, I want us to see, how do we minimize tension? All right? How do we minimize tension? Let's identify the tension areas and then see how we can minimize them. You know, when we work in a team, I still have not defined a team. I believe that the definition can come up, it will spring up automatically. Although there's a definition put there in the brochure, you can read it. But the truth is that when we work together as a team, it doesn't mean that there will not be problems, okay? There will be problems, definitely. And it's one thing to understand ways in which we can cause tension in others. But what do we do about them? What do we do? You know, because we said we are made in God's image, does it mean that if since I am a team builder, I'm using myself now as an example, I'm a team builder, does it mean because I'm a team builder, I should remain indecisive forever? Does it mean that? No. All right, that's my weakness, and I recognize that that's my weakness, and then I try to work on it. And I do try. I'm being honest now. I try, since I know this about me, if I say I will think about it, I may not take too long, or I could just decide to say, okay, wow, instead of thinking about it, why don't you just take this decision now? Life is full of risk. You can take a decision. So I try to overcome this. I don't stick to the fact that because this has shown that I'm indecisive, so I should remain with it. No. So whatever you have seen that could be your weakness, don't stick to it and say, well, you know, I'm a designer, developer, and we are dominating. So if you're in a meeting with others, you now tell them, you know me, I'm dominating, so I will carry on and dominate. No, that would be too bad if we do that. But the thing is, we should expect to work on those weaknesses and also try to change. It may take time, but at least let's work on them. The attitude of a leader who is a servant is to be humble enough to accept that which is good for the kingdom. And I believe that if we do that, it will be helpful. If we look at Romans 12 from verses 2 to 3, it says, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. For by the grace given to me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the measure of faith that God has given you. So what Paul is saying is that we should try to minimize tension by being humble. If we think of ourselves as important people, then we may be less concerned about the way we behave and whether or not our relationship has caused tension in our as we relate to others. And so Paul encourages us not to think of ourselves as more important than we actually are. And the implications of that command is that we should do whatever we can to minimize tension between us and other people. Now, what can we do to adapt our normal preferences of behavior? Okay, and that's where we have, if you look at on page 38, all right, these are from page 37, you see adaptability steps, okay? There are 8 very practical and concrete adaptability steps that you can take to be a more effective and harmonious team member, regardless of your preferred leadership style. So if you turn to page 38 on top, it says, if you are a designer developer, what should you do? And then be more, explain, and be less. All right. And if you are a team builder, you should do what? And then, and take, then, and look. And if you are a motivator influencer, you should slow down and then, and then, and then, and if you are an implementer, you should do what? And learn to say, initiate, increase your, be more, and be less. Okay. So these are the adaptability steps. I want to say that some of the steps, you know, that we have read here, that have been suggested here, may be outside our comfort zone. All right? But in taking them, we demonstrate that we can adapt our behaviors in order to fit more smoothly into the styles of the others on our teams. All right? And the result will be that we can work more effectively together. And, you know, some of these adaptability steps may rub off on other people, but we need to learn to just take them and work with them. And we can take little by little. We can go little by little. So I'll give you an opportunity to look at these steps. Just focus on your own and ask yourself, what do I need to work on? Which adaptability step do I need to take? What particular one? Maybe you can just pick 1 or 2 and say in the next 1 month or in the next 2 weeks or next time we're having a meeting or next time we're doing a particular thing, this is what I will try to do. Just focus and perhaps note some of these adaptability steps that you want to take. Okay. And as you do that, pray about this step and ask God to help you as you walk at the step and as you relate with others. And be very intentional about it, not only today, but for the rest of the week and the following week. As you begin, you will feel it becoming more natural to you. Once you finish one step, you can go back and pick another one, you know, to work on. And as I close, I would just want to say a team is 2 or more people working together to accomplish a task. It is more than a group of assembled people. Again, it is a collection of individuals who have a common purpose, who are striving for the same results. And because each member makes a unique contribution, a team is a powerhouse of potential. So there's a lot of potential in the team that we can tap and we can explore and we can have. And I pray that God will help us to see the uniqueness of our teams as we work together. I'm sure you have worked with teams that were effective and ineffective. And you could think of different things that made the team effective or made it